and welcome to an extraordinary meeting of the Corporate and Community Overview and Scrutiny Committee. This is a first time for most of us meeting in this room. And here with me this evening, I have Councillor Paul Fishwick, Councillor Clive Jones, Councillor Anne Chadwick, Councillor Sam Akhtar, Councillor Sam Cunningham, Councillor Jackie Rance, and Shirley Boyd is joining us on Teams. Do we have any apologies presented this evening?
Yes, Chairman. Apologies received from Councillor Guy Grandison, and Councillor Jackie Rance is substituting this evening. And as you said, Councillor Shirley Boyd will be joining us virtually.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, Paul?
Yeah, yes, a very minor one, Alison. My
Do you want
wife.
to? I mean,
Oh,
you
sorry,
might need to
yeah.
remove your mask to speak.
That's a very good point as well. My wife is a volunteer for CAB, and we do talk about some voluntary services in here, but it's a very minor one, I understand.
Thank you. Phil?
Yes, Chair. As Deputy Executive for Health, Wellbeing and Adult Services, I need to exclude myself for item 46, so we'll leave the room for the purpose of that.
Understood. Thank you. Item 43, public question time.
None received, Chair.
Member question time.
None received, Chair.
Okay, so the first item for our scrutiny is the BME Forum Progress Update. And we're welcoming Dina this evening and Mark. Right. I think you're on mute, Mark.
Hello. Is that better? Cool.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good, sorry, thank you. So I think you have a copy of the presentation in front of you. I don't know if Neil's going to be sharing it on the screen or not, or Callum, but I will take you through the presentation and obviously take any questions that members might have. This report outlines what's been happening with the BME Forum, and the first page of the presentation provides a summary of the background to this. So Wokingham has had a BME Forum since 2002 as an ability, a place for people with a Black minority ethnic heritage to find out about the council and express their views about a range of issues that relate to the council and life in Wokingham Borough. The forum has always been independent, but has been strongly supported by the council, and that includes providing a venue for the meetings and a certain degree of administration support as well. In September of 2020, the chair of the BME Forum resigned, and the deputy chair of the BME Forum made a commitment that the council would find and fund an independent review of the forum, as there were some challenges to the forum about whether it needed to change, as it hadn't really changed that much in its, at that point, 18 years of existence. The council did some review around some available support and commissioned Jude Line Nicholas Associates to conduct the review, and that's an organisation that had a good track record in doing this kind of work. That review has taken place, and everyone who's a member of the BME Forum and those people that had attended recent BME Forum meetings, including the online meeting that was held last June, July, were invited to participate in the review, and we received the final review report and recommendations in July of this year. In terms of what that review discovered or concluded.
I was hoping to get home early from work tonight. I've not had time to read through this.
Yep.
Social care capital.
Hello, Charles, could you put your camera on when you're speaking, please?
Is that okay? Shall I continue?
Okay, please carry on, Mark.
Sorry, thank you. It's okay. So what the review discovered or concluded is that there is still very much a passion and enthusiasm for a BME forum of some type within the borough, and that there were a range of achievements that the forum had made over the year, particularly in terms of some of the key things around some key policing incidents, health and well-being, and the celebrations around Black History Month. As I mentioned at the top of this sort of presentation, the BME Forum is independent, but I think that perhaps that independence hasn't been communicated sufficiently well or wasn't sufficiently clear, because I think there was a view that it was part of the council. There was also, in terms of opportunities for the forum, a clear indication that it could help in terms of mentoring and coaching and building greater capacity within sort of volunteering and engagement within the BME community, and that the BME Forum could act as a strong umbrella organisation or entity that could be a voice for BME residents across the borough. What also happened during the time that the independent review was being conducted is that the council officers did some work on looking at what other local authorities did in terms of engaging with their ethnic minority residents. And interestingly, what we found out was that a BME forum in the way that exists or existed in Woking Borough was kind of an outlier in terms of approaches. What was more common was that there were either sort of specific projects or initiatives that BME sort of residents or groups connected with, or that there were umbrella sort of organisations around the voluntary community sector that included a range of organisations, not just BME focused ones, and that there were specific bits of project work and funding that was quite commonplace as well. So we thought that's quite useful information to be able to give to the BME Forum as opportunities for perhaps different ways to look at how they may want to operate in the future. So in terms of next steps, what we have done is we've shared that report with everyone from the BME Forum and everyone who participated in the review. The report is also available to view on the council's website. We have reached an agreement with Involve, the local community voluntary sector organisation, to work with the BME Forum to understand what it wants to do next and how it can operate as an independent entity within the borough. That invitation has been sent out again to everyone who participated in the review and everyone who's a member of the BME Forum, and Involve have made a commitment to get back to and start engaging with those individuals from the week commencing the 15th of November. So in terms of what will happen for the BME Forum now, that's very much for the BME Forum to decide. I think what is clear is that the council will still try and support the BME Forum in what it wants to do next. But it's really something the BME Forum will need to sort of determine for itself. I think that's the end of the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mark. Members, do we have questions? Okay, so I've got Paul, Sam, and Shirley on. Okay, yeah. Right, Paul.
Thank you, Mark, for that introduction. Just a bit of clarification. On page 6, you mentioned report to council July 2021. You didn't mean full council. I think what you meant was report back to borough council officers.
Yes, the report was received back to the council then, yes.
Yeah, okay. And my other question is, what evidence is there that VCS stroke local authority type models work? That's
a very good question. I think the evidence around it is in terms of the projects that have been delivered. I think Dina raising a hand at this point.
Yeah, so there's actually a model which runs in one of our neighbouring boroughs over in West Berkshire, which we've actually seen live. And if you look at somewhere like Reading, who have Acre, and West Berkshire, who have Community Matters, and these are both organisations who are independent of the local authority, but work very much in the way that we're hopeful that the BME Forum will be able to do in the future. And they're both really good models of that independent voluntary sector support model that we're looking at.
So those particular models which you're saying work well in neighbouring authorities, how many years have they been running for?
So Community Matters, I don't think it's been running for too many years, but ACRE's certainly been running in Reading for many, many years. And it is and much like the BME Forum in Wokingham has been. And I suppose for us, this is the next step of independence, really. But they've certainly been running, certainly ACRE's been running in Reading for many, many years.
It's probably also, I mean, in terms of the organisation's approaches that we looked at, we did obviously review those that were identified as accepted best practice. So there were obviously some from London boroughs, but also from places like Birmingham, Manchester, which again have had very long and well-established sort of engagement models with their ethnically diverse communities.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mark. Next question from Councillor Sam Akhtar.
Thank you very much. My question is, what are the goals and priorities for the year?
The goal and priority from the council has been to support the BME Forum in doing a review and come up with some options for it and provide some support to the BME Forum, then taking the next step in determining what it wants to do next. I think the goals and priorities for the BME Forum are for the BME Forum to decide and agree. So it's not something that we can really say at this point what they will be.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Next question is from Councillor Shirley Boyt, who's joining us online.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. Thank you, Mark. First one is I'd be interested to know how many people were consulted by JNA and how many different ethnic backgrounds were spoken to. I assume that in their main report to you that information may well have been made available. So that's question number one. The other question is that under recommendations, JNA report recommendations, it strikes me that the first three items are not really recommendations. They're just saying, this is what we found out. This is what's kind of going on. And then the final three are recommendations. So that's just a bit of semantics, really. But the other thing is you're saying the research, most other councils don't have a bespoke BME forum. And I would just be interested to know which ones do and, you know, how they differed from what we were doing. Are they successful? Because we're clearly going off on a route of the BME forum being more independent than it was before, even though we were led to believe it was before, if you see what I mean. So I'm just kind of interested to know why that model was discounted.
So, okay, so starting at the beginning, what I can do is make sure that I send you a copy of the actual sort of full report, because it's much more detailed than just the sort of slides that we have here. In terms of the people that participated in the review, we didn't get, I don't think, specific details about everyone who participated, because that participation was, confidential in terms of who actually been involved. What we do know is that in terms of who was contacted for the review, it was everyone who was a current member of the BME Forum, everyone who had attended the last BME Forum meeting, which was in sort of June or July last year, which was attended by about 70 people as a Teams meeting. And throughout the process, as well as we publicised it through social media and through the website, and I think it was a press article as well. Anyone who was identified sort of through that who wanted to come forward. There was, I think, one mention in the report that there was less than expected participation in the review from sectors of the Afro-Caribbean community. And that was the one thing that was detailed sort of in the report. In terms of people that we researched in terms of other local authorities. We didn't research every local authority. What we did is they contact those that were, we looked at all the authorities in Berkshire, all the authorities in the surrounding areas in the sort of our bit of the southeast. We looked at some key best practice from London and kind of the northwest. And it was within that cohort of organisations that we're looking at, say that the model for the BME forum was kind of an outlier, and that others, many were taking sort of different approaches. And then you correctly observed that the sort of recommendations, that was including the recommendations or the findings that came from the JNA report, and it is very much just a summary of what sort of came through, and it was there to reflect that there are some positives to the work that BME Forum has done. I think that should be recognised, but also that there were, you know, areas and opportunities for improvement.
Thank you. And would you mind if I ask something else, Chair, if you don't mind? Last time when the BME Forum was reviewed by this committee, there were a number of resolutions made at the end of that meeting. One was options to be explored to include an annual article in the Borough News to celebrate Black History Month. Options to be explored to include an article in regular editions of the Borough News to celebrate different cultures within the borough. Number 5, which was about meetings in other venues, I can see why that hasn't happened because of COVID. A review to be undertaken into equality opportunities in the workplace to understand what blockages to career progression there might be for members of the BME community. Officers to look into how a wider calendar of cultural celebrations might be promoted. Now, I do understand that that one has actually been produced. So I just wondered if, when doing this report, you did refer back to the previous visit to this scrutiny.
I mean, absolutely, yeah. We made JNA aware of the sort of background information that had been happening, and that work was kind of all in train. I mean, I do think that in the last Borough News, there has been an article around Black History Month, and I know certainly Black History Month has been sort of well promoted by the council this year, specifically in terms of aligning with the National Black History Month campaign of Proud to Be. And in some sense, we've also been slightly overtaken by events in terms of the BME Forum activity being paused whilst the review is taking place. But definitely, and that doesn't stop the BME Forum in terms of what it decides, what it wants to do next, incorporating any or all of those things. I think aside from the calendar of cultural activities, I think some things you mentioned there are also being picked up within the council's overall new equality strategy work. So certainly in terms of connecting with staff, that's been a key part of that. And I know there is an ethnically diverse staff group that is now established and operating.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shirley. Thank you, Mark. Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Alison. Thanks for the presentation, Mark. Can you tell me how many different groups the council would like to engage with, and how many they actually have engaged with? So there's two different things. How many you would like to engage with, and then how many you've been able to engage with?
In terms of BME, certainly we'd like to engage with all of them. We want to have a dialogue with all those groups across the borough. And I'd hope that in terms of being, you know, invitation to participate in the review, we did reach out and contact all of them. I know during the period of the review, we did have one or two groups that we weren't necessarily initially aware of, that either operated as umbrella organisations across Berkshire and want to be involved, or actually were located in Reading Borough but had membership within Wokingham Borough that we did invite to participate in the review. So certainly the opportunity was there for everyone to participate if they wanted to.
Okay, and have you got a number of how many groups you've been able to actually engage with?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I can certainly give you a list of the numbers in terms of who was invited. As I say, the consultants didn't tell us exactly everyone who they spoke to, so we can't necessarily say exactly every group that we know was involved.
Okay. Do you think that the actions that we're taking are going to get some active, positive engagement from different groups? Because if it doesn't, then this is not going to be a success, is it?
I would obviously hope that it will. The key thing, say, is going back to the BME forum being truly independent of the council. And so in some senses, it's about us creating that platform opportunity for the BME forum to have, a supported period of review and redetermination about what it wants to do. And we would obviously encourage the BME forum in whatever form that it takes next to be as inclusive of ethnic diversity across the borough as possible. And I think we would probably be challenging towards it if it wasn't in any sort of noticeable way.
Okay, and one last question. I assume there is a small budget to support this, is there?
So there is some budget in terms of the support for the equality strategy. Some of that, yes, which is going to be supporting this work. I mean, we did fund the work by Jude Line Nicholas Associates. And if there's other sort of bit of work in terms of venues for meetings or any sort of small sort of pieces of funding around that, then we'll try and look and support that from existing budgets, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Paul, did you want to come back with another question?
Yes, thank you. Mark, I think you said that the July 2021 report was actually on our website. I've had a look, but I can't find it. It's not coming up. So could you send a link through?
I can send you a link, but I can say if you type in Woking BME forum, and the very last of the drop-down boxes has the independent review in there, but I can certainly circulate the links.
Okay, I'll have another go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mark, how much confidence do you have that we have that reached out to sufficient, range of people within our Black and Asian and minority ethnic communities to produce this report?
Confidence that we reached out, complete, total. We made sure that people were contacted, not just once, but multiple times to participate. How much confidence that everyone would have liked to participate did, not as much. I mean, I think that the comment from the report that there was less than expected contribution from the Afro-Caribbean community is interesting is the first word I would use. Obviously that is there for the BME forum in whatever form it takes next to have that challenge in terms of making sure that it is in of itself inclusive.
And do you expect that the new structure will look significantly different to what we have had in the recent decade?
I don't think I can say it, and what I wouldn't want to do is predetermine it. The BME forum existed in this borough in the way that it did for nearly 20 years. And some parts of that, I know that the organisations and the people that were participating throughout that valued that approach. We used to get comments that they really valued having the meetings in the council chamber. They felt that gave the forum a certain sense of status. Even though we did offer to have the meetings in different sort of venues. But I think that in terms of how we'd all expect engagement to happen nowadays, having meetings in a council chamber 4 or 5 times a year is relatively archaic at this point. And we want the BME forum to be using other opportunities and other means to engage with residents across the borough. But it will be for the forum to decide. And I say I wouldn't want to predetermine that.
No, I understand that. Just to go back when I was talking about that we reached out to the best range of people from the different ethnic backgrounds. Do you feel we also engaged with people from all ages that the demographics was sufficient?
Certainly, there were organisations and groups that we contacted which may have had a slight more focus on sort of youth activities, and we did try and reach out to some of the people that we know in terms of the BME community who are more sort of either youth focused or are young themselves. And certainly in the last BME forum meeting that we had, there was certainly a range of different ages in terms of adult ages. I don't think there were any sort of young people we'd class as children or young people who were involved, but one would hope the organisations we did reach out to were ones that they themselves had a good contribution in terms of a wide range of ages. I mean, just for example, places like the Aisha Mosque or the Ramgarhi Sahaba Sikh Centre, those organisations themselves do cater and support a wide range of different age activities, within their sort of organisations, and so we were hoping that would sort of feedback into the review.
And we did get lots of input from women. It wasn't just all mostly from men.
I say I don't know exactly who was interviewed, but it's my understanding that yes, there was a good mix of genders. One thing that's been one of the positives from the BME Forum review, BME Forum work, certainly in the last 10 years, was around the Healthy Lifestyles project that it delivered. And one of the key successes of that project was how it engaged with a range of ages and had strong participation from women as well. So again, that was done through some of the key community organisations like the Sikh organisation, but also the Indian Community Centre and the Pakistani Community Centre.
Thank you. I think we will be very interested to hear the progress of the BME Forum, and I hope you'll be able to come back to this committee when there's a new structure, a new model to share with us. Does anyone have any final questions? Oh, Councillor Anne Chadwick.
Yes, I just wondered if there's a typical range of issues which fora in other areas consider, and whether the local forum might benefit from being aware of those sorts of issues. So
yeah, throughout its life, the BME Forum routinely had updates around educational attainment. And so every year there was a breakdown of that presented by a WBC officer, as well as issues around policing and community safety and sort of crime and disorder. And that ranged from things like stop and search, but also some quite involved sort of discussions and support around extremism and terrorist activities. Alongside that, health and well-being was very much a key theme. That's why we had the Healthy Lifestyle Project, but also we've had things at the BME Forum around things more around sort of well-being and mindfulness in terms of drug and alcohol use, depression, those kinds of things.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deanna and Mark. We'll now move to the next item on the agenda.
Thank you.
So Councillor Phil is leaving us at this point, and we will bring you back, Phil, as soon as we've completed this agenda item. This is item 46, which is looking at the medium-term financial for 22 to 25 for the Adults and Children's Services Capital and Revenue Budget proposals. If anyone's looking at the agenda documents, this is page 11 to page 62. And we're welcoming Graham Ebers to the meeting. I believe that we've got lead members with us, Councillor Graham Howe for Children's Services, Councillor Charles Moggetts for Adult Services, and we're also welcoming our Children's Services Director, Carol Comis. Over to you, Graham.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Hopefully you'll remember that we've, myself and John Kaiser, presented to you the summary position for the MTFP for the whole council over the next 3 years, covering revenue, capital, special items, all the components of the revenue submission and capital, all those within the MTFP. What we're going to focus on tonight is the adults and children's, and I just want to say a few words. I'll present the slides, so you've got them in the pack, but you also see them on the screen. And I just want to add some additional words around the fluidity of this medium-term financial plan process. So every year, I would tell you that there are many moving parts that we're presented with that we don't yet know answers to. I would say this year, more than any I can remember, that landscape that we face is very, very difficult to determine. So just to remind you, this is what we call our lockdown 1 version in terms of financial lockdown. So this was our best estimate at the time we produced the summary back in the summer, with all of the bids that went to make up that summary position. So we're holding true to that, and we're running through all of the components of that summary for you to have oversight on and comment on, put forward suggestions, etc. So all that's right and proper and a very valid part of the process. But there will be some changes, undoubtedly. I already know of some changes, and we'll bring those to you after we've flushed through the first version of the lockdown 1, and then all the changes we'll bring back to you. So what we will do, though, and through my opening slide, I will be teasing out the areas where I can tell you where you can expect some further pressures or some further, maybe even additional income, for example. So I think it's just important to remind you that we produce a version the best we can at the time. We run through that version, but of course the world changes, and you'll see from my opening slide some of those changes. And it's just worth bearing in mind that, and we will flag where we go, where we think there may be pressures on particular areas. It doesn't mean by any means all figures change, but there are pressures in certain areas. So I'll now move into presentation mode. Can you see that?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. So this was as stated, revenue and capital. So it's all of the bids associated with adults and children's services. That's the agenda. Here's the areas of uncertainty I just want to refer you to, are those listed there. Now, some of those will impact on both the council, but also the provider market that we work in. So, for example, utilities inflation, we know there's significant pressure around gas and electricity, and of course providers. I mean, we're talking a lot about the care community, and providers, of course, they'll be facing those as well. Construction inflation in this context will impact on our capital programme. It's mostly around buildings that we're finding this impact most pertinently. There's general inflation, of course. We just hear off the TV what the inflation rates are rising to. We know we have the national insurance increase, which was part of the funding towards the adult social care and NHS review. So it's not just Woking and Borough Council that will face that NI increase, but our providers will face that as well. We have a whole host of unknown about the impact and indeed the funding around the adult social care and NHS review, but we know the figures could be very substantial. We have the local government finance settlement is still unknown, even though we've had the autumn statement and we've had the spending review announcement the other week. It is still unclear what the financial impact will be on this council in terms of the grant that we get. And it is also unclear whether it will include the continuation of the new homes bonus or not. Again, another substantial figure. Other areas around the minimum wage increase, we know what it is, but we don't know how that impact will be felt across all our budgets. And of course, the unknown impact of COVID-19. And obviously, that is not something that we've come to the end of, although sometimes it's felt that way. But it's very much, we're very much in the process of still responding, and we're in the process of assessing the impact of throughout the duration of that pandemic. And that is most particularly pertinent with regard to the care services that you're considering tonight. So I'll say no more other than hand over to Charles Margetts and Matt Pope to take you through the adult social care revenue to begin with, and either will just tell me when to press the next button.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I wanted to just very briefly do a brief introduction before we get stuck into this. First of all, basically, these figures, as Graham said, are where we started basically looking at this in the summer. The last 2 years, we've been able to deliver the on budget each year, even despite the pressures of COVID-19 next year. So whilst I agree with everything that Graham says, basically about the level of risks in the marketplace at the moment, we are confident, as optimistic as we can be, that we can deliver these figures and obviously stand on our record, especially with what was achieved last year during COVID-19. I think I would say the big subject in this area is obviously the government's adult social care reforms. And as Graham said, the financial consequences of these are at the moment rather unknown, and are going to remain that way until the white paper appears early next year. Now, so none of that is priced into the figures you're about to see. Now, there could be, and I use the word could, big impact on Wokingham, because obviously the government capping care costs at £100,000, there's the question per person, there's a question of who pays for that beyond that, which is unknown at the moment. Now, we've not been standing still and waiting for this to happen. You know, the leader in particular and myself have been talking to our local MPs about the potential risk this causes us, and trying to make sure that they're aware of what we think and the particular way this could play out in Wokingham. But that remains a work to be seen. I think I would say, to help explain the figures you've got here, firstly, none of this is new. It's all ideas we've seen before, but it's obviously advancing a bit further now. But there's two big ideas going through this. First of all, the new dementia care home, which is self-explanatory largely. But secondly, some of you will have heard me refer to our demand management or Empower programme before. And the logic of that is simple. If we do nothing in adult social care, costs rise by 4% a year. And the logic of that is to try and slow down that cost increase by trying to anticipate as much of the demand earlier, when it's more manageable, where the voluntary sector can help with some of it, and basically to minimise high cost emergency care placements which are obviously very expensive and entirely reactionary. So they're the two big ideas. And Graham, if you're now ready to give me the next slide, we'll move forwards. So revenue summary, you can see the savings at the top, which I'll go into in more detail next time, but it's principally the demand management programme kicking in. Growth is the 4% inflationary pressure of costs on care every year. Special items we'll come to in a minute. Graham, if you can give me the next slide, please. So working from the top to the bottom there, savings, demand management, this is the effect of the Empower programme coming into our figures. And as you can see, they're really significant savings. So again, what to outline that's using the voluntary sector more often, trying to diagnose people much earlier in terms of, and rather than giving them necessarily the care they want, giving them the care our specialists think they need. And that's a significant part of the savings. Second one down, the learning disability review, as it says there, better utilisation of contracts, better use of accommodation, recommissioning services. Optalis review, we continue to work hard at the governance of Optalis to try and make it more efficient, basically give better value for money, and improve commissioning, reduced overheads there. You can see again another saving. The CHC claims is us going through our contracts with health, basically, and making sure health are paying for their fair share of costs, basically related to residents coming out of hospital. Now, growth, basically, care and support, managing increasing demand in numbers of complexity. Everybody knows the equation with adult social care. We've got a population that's getting older, and their needs are increasing. So that's the growth for 4% a year, basically, that we get for just standing still. Prevention, investment in preventative services. This is our work to strengthen the voluntary sector. So you've got the voluntary sector hub, which some of you will be aware of, to give them a centre in Wokingham in there. And you've got more contracts and services being placed with them, because obviously they can get out into the community, they can basically and help our residents and avoid the need of expensive last-minute social care provision needed. Staffing resource to deliver the demand management programme. That is permanent staff brought on as part of the Empower programme to make sure we bake in those savings year after year after year and keep that 4% as close to 2% as possible. The special items, demand management, resource investment to deliver change. That's temporary staff being brought in basically to deliver the Empower programme. As you can see, the need for them tails off fairly steeply over the first 3 years. Transitions, this is a service that was with Children's Services, which moved to Adult Services, I think 18 months ago, maybe 2 years. And it wasn't in particularly good nick. We've spent a lot of time and money trying to raise it to the right level of performance. And this is just, I think, 2 extra posts to help us get to that place for 2 years. And Older People's Dementia Home, as I mentioned, opening shortly. You'll see the cost of it on the next slide. But this is just literally funding to cover the running costs until full capacity is reached, because obviously there's going to be a period when it's open where it's not fully utilised. Graham, if you can give me the next slide, please. Thank you. Oh.
It's the capital.
Oh, yeah, capital. Sorry. Thank you, Graham. Looking at this here, the capital expenditure for adult services. So you've got the older people's dementia care home. So this is the new home being built basically at Toutley, which I think is in for planning permission at the moment. And this is a larger version of Suffolk Court, basically modern, state-of-the-art. Why are we doing this? Because it will enable more residents to get better care and to stay in borough. And also, basically, it avoids us having to commission care outside the borough, which is more expensive. And we're trying to manage demand, think forward, and anticipate things that will need to come. So it's an expensive building, no doubt, basically, but it should help us be more efficient and deliver a greater level of care for years to come. The adult social care accommodation and transformation and the adult social care demand management are all connected to the learning disability strategy. So this is basically a growing area of need, and this is specialist buildings basically and additional services to help with delivery of the learning disability strategy. So specialist housing, accommodation mainly for learning disabilities, and there's also some in mental health in there. So these tend to be smaller buildings around the borough. Adult social care community equipment, that's equipment we're putting in people's homes to try and encourage them to be able to survive at home longer and to live independently without needing care. Mosaic, modernisation, system implementation is just upgrades to the computer system. Learning disability, outreach and overnight respite centre, it is what it says, and maintenance and refurbishment. Now, one point I would make to you is Graham's mentioned COVID. You can see the impact of COVID in the budget here. At year one, we've got a lot of expenditure, which is basically things that have been planned 2 or 3 years ago. Year two and year three, much less. And the reason for that is simply because the resources and management time of the department for the 18 months previously has been largely completely consumed by basically COVID and dealing with the response. There will be ideas coming forward, but they're not at a stage where we can put them in this yet. So please don't think for 1 second that we're not ambitious to do more over years to come. We certainly are. You know, there's just nothing because of the COVID response that is in a position where we can put it in there yet. Next slide, please, Graham. Yeah, I think that just relates to one of the things basically that was on the previous slide, the 700k investment a year, which was the preventative services, and that's it, I think. So happy to take any questions, and I know Matt is on the line as well, so if there's anything for him, I'm sure he'll be happy to answer.
I'm sure there will be lots of questions for you. Of course, Paul's got his hand up first, so please go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentations, Graham and Charles. Charles, you partly answered one of my questions, which was the ASC 10 on page 40, which is the older people's dementia care home, and funding to cover running costs until optimal capacity is reached. From what I understand is that the care home will be open in 2024-25, and you've got 500,000 there. Will that be filled in the first year, or will that be filled over several years, so there'll be additional costs beyond that 24-25?
My understanding is, Paul, that the aim would be to fill it in the first year, but because literally we do have demand in this area, and obviously a large amount of the residents from here will be coming from Suffolk Lodge. But I'll let Matt add anything he wishes to on the back of that.
No, I think that pretty much summarises it. People will move from Suffolk Lodge to the new facility that will more than half fill the new home, and then new people will move in through the year. This money is just to cover that transitional arrangement for that year.
Thank you very much. ASC 1, page 42, which is the dementia care home, which is effectively going to be constructed over the next 2 years. You've mentioned already about the areas of uncertainty, construction, general building costs, etc. You've got funding in there already, but what provision have you got for the current increased costs to date?
I would answer that, Paul. I work in the construction industry in my day job, so I'm fully aware of this as a risk issue. That is basically the budget figure that we've got in there at the moment. Basically, there is demand modelling going on at the moment and the final specification being done. That figure does have some contingency in it, but the final specification is still being worked on as we speak. So, I think the best I can say at the moment is we believe that figure to be true and to be right. If there is any change, we'll obviously come back to you and let you know. Matt, anything you'd like to add on that?
No, I don't think so. Some of those things that you've just talked about, you and Paul have just talked about, which are new, we're looking at in a detailed business case coming very, very soon. But we're pretty sure that the whole rationale for this, so the sale of the property and the reinvestment and the money we've got in the programme, will stand up as a business case. And also, I'd say from a need point of view, it's something that we desperately need in the borough to help us manage demand and provide the care people need in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sam.
Thank you very much. I was going to ask about the what changes may happen after the government settlement for WBC is announced and inflation effect. But I think you've sort of covered that in the first bit. Just looking at page 20, regards to the capital summary. Yeah, really interested in this mosaic modernization systems implementation. It'd be great to sort of see some sort of commentary just on sort of the net gains that could be attained from this implementation.
Are you happy to take that one, Matt? Because you'll know that better than me.
Yeah, yes, I am. So some of that is about you simply have to keep systems up to date to make sure they are in support. So that's something about making sure we're keeping our version of our care system up to date. And some of it is about reconfiguring it alongside the work that we're doing with business process redesign. Essentially, we've talked about how we're going to manage demand better by having a clearer social care pathway and doing some redesign. Then we need the system to reflect that. Other benefits are there will be elements that people will be able to do online in the future in terms of assessment, giving us information and things. So there'll be benefits there to people, family members and people and residents there. So I think those are the main benefits of that system. I think the other benefit is it will give me better reporting going forward, and obviously better data, better reporting allows me to manage the department with even more precision.
And Chairman, if I can just add, the reason why there isn't a bid form explaining all of that is because it's a reprofiled from 21-22 and therefore has already been approved.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Clive.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Graham, for starting this off. My first comment is one on page 12, public sector equality duty. So I'm pleased that we're going to be looking at that before all of these different bids are finalised. And that was a commitment that you made at the last overview and scrutiny meeting, and I'm glad to see that it is here. So thank you.
Yes, we listen, Clive.
That's nice to hear. Second question is for Matt. How generally did you do last year with the expected savings that you thought that you were going to do? I think I probably asked you this last year, and if I remember the answer rightly, you knew that you had most of them in the bag before we actually got to the meeting a year ago. But how has it gone this year?
We did. So this year, there's a bit of an echo there. This year we're bang on target. It's about 2 million savings, and we're bang on target, which is why I'm confident that we'll deliver the savings in the programme for next year. So we're bang on target, and we made even in the last financial year, so not this financial year, but the last financial year when we had COVID, we still managed to hit that to hit our savings targets. So I'm very pleased about that and confident that that will continue, given all the uncertainties that that Graham laid out at the beginning.
Good, thank you very much. I think you should be congratulated for doing that.
Yeah.
Because it means that your forecasting with your colleagues is really good, and
Yeah,
you should be very pleased with that. So my next question is on page 31. Alison's just indicated I can have another question. And we're looking for savings here of 2,750,000, and we're going to get those savings because the voluntary sector is going to help us. Do we really think that there is the capacity within the voluntary sector in the Wokingham area to be able to help us achieve those savings?
I mean, this is about, you're right, Clive, that the voluntary sector is a key part of this, but there are also other parts of this programme as well, which is basically when you look at a timeline of where we spend, you know, somebody's journey through our service, if it's starting here and ending up there, the old-fashioned model has most of the expenditure and most of the people here where it's expensive. And the whole part is moving as much of that forward to here where it's less expensive, easier to deal with, basically, and you're identifying need earlier. And if you can do that, you can keep people at home earlier. And rather than diagnosing care basically on what people come in and say they need, you're actually diagnosing on what they want. Sorry, I've got that the wrong way around. What they need, what they actually basically, what they think they need, what the professional thinks they need, which is sometimes a different thing. So there's a lot more. You're right, the voluntary sector is a key part, but there's more to that than more to this than that. And I think, again, you can see the savings we've delivered already off this programme. We know it works. So, yeah, this is why we're locking in more staff to support it going forwards, you know, moving forwards with it. Matt, anything you want to add to that? You're on mute, Matt.
Oh dear. It's not just about the voluntary sector picking up all the work in order to deliver those efficiencies. That's just part of the suite of things that we're going to do around that.
Okay. I wanted to ask a question about page 44, where there's no funding identified by something that seems quite important. Just if you could just help me understand that more.
Sorry, Alison, what specifically is that?
Yeah, I'm struck. I've got different page numbering, so I'm a bit. Which bit?
Chairman, is it revenue or capital?
Sorry, I'm looking at the printed document on page 44. It's the last of the capital bid template documents, ASC2. It's one of Wesley's. £750,000.
Demand management.
Have you got that, Matt or Charles?
Yeah, I'm just sorry. I'm looking through on my screen and it's really small, and I'm just trying to find the bit that you're.
That's the learning disability.
Yeah, I would also comment at this point that we do normally ask that scrutiny documents are not in anything less than 10-point font. This is exceptionally small.
That would help me. Which one, Charles? Did you find it? Which one is it? Yeah, ASC2. Yeah, I think I've got it now.
Demand management 550, 1200, 1750. It's the specialist housing and accommodation for learning disabilities and mental health line.
Yes. So that bid is for the purchasing and refurbishment of accommodation and property for homes for those people in the borough. Does that answer your question?
I understand what it is. What I don't understand is that we've got no funding identified, and it seems to be something essential that we provide. Could you put the slide up on screen so that the public will be able to see it too?
I thought I was.
We do have funding identified.
Yes.
Okay, well, it clearly says no on page 44.
That's wrong then.
Okay, I'm showing on the screen.
Well, that's music to my ears. I'm delighted to hear we have identified funding.
Okay, yeah, I'm showing that page on screen now. So it's the third one down that says a total of 1.75 million is bid for in year 22-23, which is next financial year.
We're looking at the same slide that we have been for a long time. Did you think you'd changed it, Graham?
No, I thought this is what we're talking about. We're talking about ASC 2, which is Adult Social Care Demand Management, which is what Charles and Matt were referring to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let's now go to Councillor Shirley Boyd online.
Sorry, thank you, Alison. I was going to ask about learning adults with learning disabilities, and this possibly may have answered my question, because I knew it was something that was we're doing more of, buying properties and converting them to provide supported living, and then I was looking in all the other documents for some evidence of funding. So is this funding here for that purpose, for purchasing properties and converting them for adults with learning disabilities?
It is.
That's good. I couldn't see where it said it, and demand management didn't really sort of mean anything to me. So
No,
so that's good.
I think that's good feedback, Shay. I think when we should change the label of that going forward. It's a bit more clearer rather than.
Yeah, I think so. It certainly wasn't obvious to me what it was for, and I was surprised that I couldn't find anything for that particular heading in the rest of the document. So thank you.
We've got about 9 schemes in train over the coming years. That'll be about 40 people that will have. It's quite significant.
Yeah, I understand you've bought, so you're utilising some of the caretakers' houses from schools no longer in use, which is a really property that we've already got. So yeah,
that's a refurb, that one. Yeah, and an adaptation.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Okay, are there any further questions from members? Anne.
Oh dear, sorry, page 34, and it's ASC 4, and the subject is ensuring the correct funding streams are identified. Why is there uncertainty about what are the appropriate funding streams?
That's health claims.
ASC 4. Yes, so there's so the answer to that question is that uncertainty is around particular people with particular care needs are funded either by the council or by health. So it's about making sure that the health service pick up those appropriate needs, as opposed to if they don't, then we're the kind of safety net that have to pay for those needs. So there's always negotiation conversations about that.
Right, I see. Okay, thank you. Just a pernickety thing. In several cases, such as on page 38, which is ASC 8, I don't understand how the cumulative movement is calculated, because it goes from 800,000 in year 1 to 600,000 in year 2. So in a lot of cases, it is cumulative. That's sum in italics. It's building over the 3 years. But there are several cases like this one where it's not building over the 3 years, and I just wondered why that is.
One for Graham.
Yeah, I can answer that. The savings and growth, they go into the base budget, so they're there forever, effectively, until they're taken out. So if you take the adult social care saving £1 million, it goes into the base and it stays there. and then there's an additional £1 million. So then there's by year 2, 2 million continually in the base, and then it goes up by another 750,000. The same is true of growth and savings. They go into the base and they stay there, and then it's the next year that adds to the figure, so they become cumulative. What you're referring to are called special items. Special items don't go into the base. They're a bit like capital. They're the revenue form of capital, whereby in 22-23 there'll be 800,000 and then it will be taken away. It's not in the base. And then 23-24 it will be replaced, it will be taken out, and 600 will be put back in. The 600 again doesn't stay in the base, it's taken out, and then it's replaced by the figure in 24-25. So special items are not cumulative, they are just injections into the budget for that single year only, as opposed to what you see above, which go into the base budget and stay in the base budget.
Oh, okay. Thank you. In that case, is that line helpful under special items?
Special items are a component of our finances. It just gives you the complete picture. So there's two types of revenue bids. There's a revenue bid, so for example, like a salary, that someone's always going to be in the organisation, so you need to know that you're going to be funding that for the foreseeable future. But you also need to know that you're bidding for one-off items. So the savings and growth should be taken together in that cumulative way. The special items we could have put on a separate slide, just to make sure you can see their special items, but they are also a valid part of the revenue budget setting process, whereby services can ask for one-off pieces of money that are not capital. So,
yes, I see what you mean. I'm just wondering if that particular line is useful to see on a special items note table, because it's not. Yeah. Is it adding information?
Yes, there's that box there. Adult social care special items is telling you that Charles and Matt are saying we need £800,000 in year 22-23, and then we're going to need 600 in 23-24, and so on and so forth. They are budget bids, they're just not ongoing budget bids.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not saying the whole table we're having. It's this particular line, cumulative movement from the 21-22 budget. I'm just asking, okay, is that a useful line to have when it's the table is about a special item?
No, the cumulative is against the savings and the growth. There is no cumulative narrative against the special items.
No, that's what I mean. Oh, okay, I'll leave that. Thank you. That was page 38, wasn't it? I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Anne. Clive Jones.
Thank you, Alison. On page 33, we're talking about Optilus, and they have made some quite significant savings over the past few years, or you have working with them, and David Birch has been doing a very good job in conjunction with you as well. And I know that he's an accountant, but he can't magic money from nowhere. Are you pretty certain that Optilus can carry on making these pretty significant savings? It's another £300,000 in the next couple of years, isn't it? And can those savings be made without any decline in the service?
Yes.
That's the answer, is it,
Yeah,
Charles?
sorry. Yeah, no,
So,
forgive me, I
Okay.
wasn't meaning to be rude. I would say, yes, we are confident with the situation, the way things are, that, yeah, those figures are deliverable. And yes, they are significant savings, but they're smaller than what's been delivered over the past few years in comparison. And
yes, and part of the programme with Optilis will be to put more services in, so there's more economies of scale. They're part of our plans are to do that, and some of this is about renegotiation of overhead costs between us and RBWM as well. So it's not about affecting any direct service level. So I'm comfortable.
All right, thanks. My next question is on page 34, and again, it's some savings that we're hoping to achieve with the Clinical Commissioning Group and Berkshire Healthcare Foundation Trust. If we're going to be able to make some savings in what we get from them, does that mean that they've been shortchanging us in the past?
Sure. Do you want me to answer that, Charles?
if you don't mind.
I think shortchanging might be going too far, but the way meeting need works is, as I said before, social care and the council is people's safety net. So you always have to be quite proactive about chasing other funding streams down to make sure you don't have to pick up care costs that others ought to pay for. So this is not anything unusual to Wokingham. It's something that happens up and down the country. So I wouldn't say shortchanging, but there is some kind of, there's that kind of financial reality of being very proactive about making sure our health partners pick up the right costs.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Clive?
Yeah. Page 35. So there's some pretty big costs in here, nearly £6 million. This is really a question for Charles. Is there any way that we can have any conversations with the government to try and get some more money out of them to help cover this cost?
Well, yes. I mean, the answer is, I agree. They are significant costs. This is the 4% a year. I mean, this is a sector that's been nationally underfunded for a long time. And, this is the consequences of it. And, as I said earlier, myself and the leader have been having discussions regarding the adult social care settlement, but I'm always up for a discussion about this and would welcome any other involvement in it, because the bottom line is if you look at most adult social care departments in the country, I don't know the exact figure right now, but the vast majority of them are over budget and overspent, and we've been able to avoid that here. But, we can't promise to keep the wolf from the door forever until basically this situation is resolved. So, yes, absolutely is the answer to your question. And it is something I've mentioned, certainly to James Sunderland, who's my MP, several times, and I'd welcome the support of other members of any political colour in doing the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's very good that you're having regular conversations with our local MPs, and that you're probably actually making some progress by going through them. But is there any opportunity to go straight to central government bypassing the MP?
Yeah, is the answer to that. I mean, Matt and I have had discussions in the past, basically, over, forgive me, Matt, I forget what you call it, but the organisation you're in of the Director of Adult Social Cares.
ADAS.
ADAS, thank you. About various campaigns they're running to lobby things. And I'm also talking quite fairly regularly at the moment, partly because of the Bob ICS stuff, to my equivalent numbers in Reading and in West Berkshire, because of course they face similar issues. In answer to your question, yes, I mean, there's several routes to string a cat. I mean, basically, one of the things, how should I say, the advantage, I know he's not there at the moment, so not mean to blow his own trumpet unnecessarily, but having a deputy such as Phil Cunnington, who's actually very active and very involved in this portfolio, is it does free up a bit more of my time. And one thing I wanted to do in particular was to try and actually make some forward progress with this, rather than just managing the shop and dealing with things, to try and make a big difference on bigger difference on some of these issues. So yes, certainly is the opportunity. It certainly is the answer to your question. There's several ways to do it, basically. And it is on the list of things to try and do more of, basically, over the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay. Thanks very much. If you ever want anybody to come with you, I'm sure we could provide a few people to come along.
Thank you.
Sorry. Next question is on page 36. So it's expenditure over 2 years of £600,000. Is this funding that we are providing to local voluntary groups? And if it is, it's only lasting 2 years. Should it not be also going into 24-25?
Do you want me to take that, Matt, or are you happy to?
Well, so it is money that is going, additional funding that's going into the voluntary sector. So we took a paper about recommissioning or reprocuring our services with the voluntary sector to executive recently, and that's about locking in what we already spend in the voluntary sector with about 2 million, and this is an increase. It's quite a sizable increase, percentage increase against that 2 million over the life of the MTFP. And obviously I'm really keen to get those services up and running. Whether it's enough and whether we could do more in later years, I think we need to keep that under review as we understand our funding streams from central government and the success of the programme and how that goes. I mean, part of that is we've been, battling COVID and in emergency mode for the last 18 months or so. So this is what's in our plan. Let's get this up and running, and then let's keep things under review. Yeah.
I would add to that, part of the drift of travel with the voluntary sector for some time, which obviously has been held up heavily because of COVID, is trying to move to longer term contracts and basically give them more security of tenure and more guarantee of what we're doing. Part of this is investing in the voluntary sector hub. But in answer to your question, as per discussions I've been having with one well-known voluntary sector group recently, is it enough? No, it's never enough, basically. But, we have mainly other services we're doing, but there are always going to be demands for more, and we have to look at them and assess which ones fit with our strategy, which ones fit where there's need in the borough that we can't actually provide ourselves as a council, and which ones are sustainable voluntary groups who are going to be here long term and are going to be able to do a good job for residents. So it's looking at the voluntary sector almost as a commissioning of independent financial enterprises, if you see what I mean. But as Matt said, and as Graham has said, the future is slightly unknown. So 3 years, but there is 2 years, sorry, but there is certainly the will to do it for much longer than that.
All right, thanks. So we can look at 24-25 next year. I don't suppose you know how the 500,000 for this year is going to be split. I've opposed any cuts in the budget for Wokingham Health Watch consistently over the last few years, and they they did have a cut in funding, I think 3 years ago. I'm not sure if we have restored that, but if we haven't, hopefully we can, and hopefully we can give them more money, because I think they do a really, really good job as eyes and ears for the council, really.
You want me to answer that, Charles?
Yeah, I mean, you will know the detail of the breakdown more. I mean, all I would say is I recognise what Working Health Watch do, because obviously their reports come to the Health and Wellbeing Board, and I think they do an important role. In terms of specific, groups, basically, as I gave a general answer basically to the last question, and it's probably all I can give to this in terms of, we obviously know the services the council basically can provide and know where the gaps are that the voluntary sector do. And that's where we're trying to direct funding. And if they're providing an offer which meets our needs, when that's a negotiation and discussion with the officers, I'm sure there's a way forwards there, basically. I'm sure there's a way forwards. But I'll leave to Matt to go into a bit more detail.
Yeah. So in terms of the 500 and then the extra 100 to make that 600, is that all allocated? No, because we've got work to do going forward around what we might want to spend that money on. Some of it is already allocated. I'm not sure what happened 3 years ago, but certainly this year our current voluntary sector providers got a good 3% uplift, and the current procurement process is to give them all security of their current contracts, continuing for three or more years going forward, so the security of funding. So it's difficult to give specific organisations kind of clarity around whether they will get additional funding or not at this point. But I think you'll see that there's a genuine effort there to provide as much financial sustainability and to continue to keep things going and to increase over the lifetime of the MTFP, as opposed to what might have happened a number of years ago, which was a reduction.
Yeah, I think there is a genuine effort from you to help our voluntary sector, because they're going to be doing a lot to help us.
Well, I was about to say, yeah. I mean, it's not, what they do to help adult social care and support the vulnerable in the borough is has been demonstrated through COVID is second to none.
So they're an absolutely key part of our strategy. We can't deliver the Empower programme, the demand management programme, without them.
No, I think you're right. So, but I just put an appeal in for you to have a look at
I think
the Health Watch budget.
We've got a process, and we'll make sure it's all included in that.
All right. Page 39. This is a special item. So this person is going to be employed. The cost is going to be 90,000, 2022, 23, 23, 24. Do we think that we can do without that post in 24, 25? Is this an interim post?
So these are extra posts, so that we have a team that deal with transitions, but this is the idea here is over 2 years we'll get in a couple of extra posts so that we can do more work, have smaller caseload and work with children and young adults who are younger transitioning into adults, and we'll kind of get through a kind of not a backlog, but we'll get more into that work and get that more stabilised, and then we won't need those additional resources. But we do have a bigger team than we've had before anyway, if you see what I mean. So at the moment, I'm confident that we won't need them. But again, the 24-25, is a new, in this is a new year 3 in the plan. We need to keep that under review as we go.
Thank you very much. That's all my questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, members, do we have any more questions on adult social care? No, in that case, may we thank Charles and Matt very much for their time. And we're going to move to scrutinising the proposed budget savings and revenue bids for children's services. And we will be inviting Councillor Phil Cunnington to rejoin us. So if we just pause for Phil to come back. Meanwhile, we've got Councillor Graham Howe, the lead member, and Carol online with us, and Graham's continuing. So we're going to have the slides on screen for the public viewing at home.
Is Phil back?
No, he's just coming in now. Here we go. So if you'd like to begin, thank you, Graham.
Yeah, of course, the same caveats that Graham spoke about earlier apply to children's services, and the same structure is being presented, so it should be familiar to our members. I think the overall message here is that what we've got here is a journey of continuity of improvement, and what we're about here is getting it right. So if we move on to the next slide, I'll just put the narrative to that. What we're showing is investment in children's services of over 3 million over a 3-year period of the MTFP, with savings planned at 2.8 million. So what, again, I re-emphasize, what this is a journey of continuity to show a drive forward in improvement. So if we go on to the next slide to go to the detail, which is I'm sure what everyone would like to see. Okay, so what we've got here is growth and savings, obviously. Of these 3 items, the growth, and 3 that are savings, which are grouped into 3 key areas. One's home to school transport, one's placements for children in care and care leavers, and transforming children's services. And then, of course, the special items, which has been discussed in adult social care. It's different. If we look at the corporate transport program, what we're saying here is that there are savings in the corporate transport program because it's been moved into children's services. So the 2 top lines there, corporate transport program and the home to school transport, should be looked in conjunction with each other. And of course, the growth relates to an increasing number of pupils legally entitled from home to school transport, both in mainstream schools and the pupils with SEND. So we anticipate a 2% increase in the mainstream schools and a 9% increase forecast for those with SEND. And that's reflecting the rise in the number of vulnerable pupils with an educational, health and care plan. Savings are being delivered under the governance of the corporate transport program. So the focus in these areas is on route optimization and efficient contracting arrangements, which we've just gone through, travel training to support independence where appropriate for SEND pupils. Obviously, that has a big impact on the cost. And the impact of educating more SEND pupils in the borough through expansion of local provision. If we move on to placements, these are for looked after children and care leavers. What we've got here is it relates to an anticipated increase in the number of children in care, which is forecast at 4% per year. So this covers the cost of placements for both looked after children and care leavers in a range of settings, from foster carers through to residential for the most complex cases. And demand, as I said, is expected to grow by 4% year on year. And that's informed by population statistics and trend analysis. Savings being delivered through a combination of more effective cost arrangements by increasing local provision, the London Road site, for example, continued focus on high cost and expensive placements, ensuring a step down plans where appropriate. And we're taking a robust approach to continuing healthcare applications, ensuring health elements are funded appropriately. Let's talk about transforming children's services. This can largely be broken down into two themes. One is staffing to meet the increases in demand for statutory services. Bear in mind, a lot of what we're talking about is statutory service, and ensuring permanency in new ways of working that were initially funded through a special item. The full breakdown is just over 1 million is provided on the template. However, specific examples include staff capacity to meet the increasing number of children and young people with an EHCP, the Compass team who work with families on the edge of care to support children to stay at home. It's very important. They're all important. And child and adolescent mental health support for those children in care. On the savings side, it represents a broad range of work to bring effectiveness and efficiency across children's services. It's really a continuation of the journey that Carol started over 2 years ago. What else have I got on there? I think, oh yeah, sorry. The alternative, I'm sorry if I'm jumping about. It's the way that I've written the notes. On the alternative delivery model for children's centres, we're reviewing the options for delivering the right services to the right people at the right time, making sure that children and families get the support they need in the most appropriate way, and linking with partners and other agencies to deliver cost-effective yet engaging services. We've got savings in lack charging policy. We're having a review of the potential to charge wealthier parents a percentage of their income towards the cost of meeting care of their children when looked after by the council. Such a policy is allowed under the Children's Act and is intended to promote a sharing of responsibility for children between the council and their parents. The impact is likely to be a reduction of cost through that shared responsibility rather than income generation. The legal review for social care and SEND. We are having a review of the joint commissioning arrangements. This is a statutory thing that we have to do. We're looking at the charging and delivery model. The review looks at both services delivered by Reading and on our behalf, and our own internal processes when engaging in legal pathways. And of course, we hit that quite often. Savings here in addition to the 100,000 savings previously set out in 21-22. Increasing demand and complexity of the legal situation. We're experiencing increasing demand. There's a greater complexity in cases. One complex case with fact finding can cost well over £100,000. And these cases are unpredictable. Unpredictable in terms of forecasting, I mean. So when you see the things in conjunction with what I've said before, we're trying to ensure delivery of cost-effective processes and service. We talk about Adopt Thames Valley, which is in the lower part there. Our adoption services are provided by a regional agency called Adopt Thames Valley, with services shared with a number of authorities to promote identification of a wider pool of potential adopters and consistent specialist services across the region. The budget growth reflects additional capacity to meet service demand. And I was present at a meeting the other week, which I have to say, this is going very well. Now, the loss of DSG school income, comment on that, is the income generated into the service is reducing with the number of maintained schools and due to relevant elements of grant funding not keeping pace with service costs. So actually the number of schools that we've got going and becoming academies actually falls within the national trends. And just for the numbers, all our secondary schools are academies now, I think. Last one I think is just tipped. And well over half of our 54 primary schools are academies. And then continuing healthcare post, the bottom item there. This is funding to ensure that the appropriate skill set level is available to the service by robustly applying continuing healthcare processes, ensuring NHS funding is secured for placements and packages of support where appropriate. Can we move on to the next slide, which is special items, please? Okay, let's take the top one. Investment is a new way of working, supporting children and young people to remain at home and prevent escalation of need. It should result in improved outcomes for children and cost savings for the service. Obviously, the mantra is here: invest early, save later. This is a continuation of a previously agreed funding for the team and is now up and running successfully, and we have included growth for 23-24 onwards to allow permanency of this approach. Meeting and managing demand. This is a continuation of previously agreed new ways of working and improved practice. You know about this, you've seen it before on the committee. Most areas are planned for growth as items CSR5. Anyway, it's phased over 23-24 and 24-25 and benefits from the initial period as evidenced. All areas contribute to the overall children's services strategy, improving outcomes for children and young people whilst ensuring value for money and effective and efficient services. Right, the delay in capitalisation of the systems contract. We've had a computer system here which has been paid out of growth, and now what we're capitalising that so that we pay no more in the future. And the transformation programme, you've heard much about this in previous meetings, and this is provision of fixed term resource to improve to support the improvement programme across all of children's services. I think next we move on to capital. None of this should be news to you, really. Most of it is to do with the provision of new schools. So I had some notes. Here we go. So let me just cover off some of the things that aren't new schools. So the basic needs primary additional places. So the year 3 budget is currently a placeholder bid based on early indications of requirement. Detailed projects and locations are still to be developed. Let's look at schools maintenance. Here, what we're introducing actually is a rolling programme to meet annual planned maintenance on council schools and their mechanical works. So what we're trying to do here is look at the stock that we've got, our building stock, and be proactive in updating our schools into, well, we can't say 21st century anymore, can we? We can say latter 21st century or even 22nd century. Let's move down to the school's devolved formula. This is government grant allocated to individual schools for capital improvements based on the government formula. And this is something where the council passports money to schools. So they put in an application for additional buildings or some other capital requirement, and the money actually passes through Wokingham Borough Council. And if I got that wrong, Graham Ebers can glare at me. He's not glaring as far as I can see. One of the items here also that we need to work on is sixth form expansion. As a year 2 and year 3 budget is currently a placeholder bid based on expected demand on sixth form places across the borough. Detailed schemes and locations are being investigated and will be revised through the MTFP process. And then the note here on Spencer's Wood Primary School, this is also a placeholder bid for a new primary school that may be required to be delivered. We expect demand in around 23-24. Additional budget is also identified in year 4. We will take questions, and I'm lucky to have Carol with me, I think, for the last time in front of this committee. So you will applaud her after every answer.
Thank you, Graham.
Okay, thank you, Graham, and hello, Carol. Okay,
Hi.
let's start with Phil, please.
Thank you for that, Graham. I just got a question about home to school transport, which every time I see the figure frightens me. I recognise that in this current year it's 2.6 million, with an increase in 22-23 of 10% or over 11%, and then smaller increases afterwards. Now, obviously, I thought I recognised that you said there was an expectation of 4% increase in demand. So is that not equilibrium with the increase in home school transport costs? Is there something specific that you're expecting to cost a lot more? And is the expected smaller increases in the following years because the outcome of the review you're expecting to be particularly positive? And maybe we can even expect something smaller or in future years for it to come back with some savings on that.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Just to give some clarity on the percentage there, we're anticipating a 2% increase on demand for mainstream schools, but a 9% increase forecast for those with SEND needs. And so obviously it's a bigger percentage of a smaller number. So whether that averages out to 4 or not, I don't know. Yes, we do expect as a result of the renegotiated and reorganised transport to school that we should get those savings in the ensuing years. Is that the answer to your question?
Yeah, that's the reassurance I was looking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Sam.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned here, it says demand for care services increasing 4% year on year. And how do we compare against other local authorities? And is this, are we sort of above average or are we right on the button?
Carol, can you help me here?
Yeah, of course. So our looked after children's numbers are much lower than our statistical neighbours. We have very good preventative services, and we work to keep children at home or placed with families rather than in the looked after sector. The 4% increase is a very complicated financial modelling that we've been working on really robustly for the last 2 years. So we do line by line reviews of all of our children. And so we look at every child, where they're placed, how we can step them down from that placement. We track those children. So there's over 100 children, about 130 children, and we track those children to ensure that the placements that they are in are the most cost effective. but there is a year-on-year increase of looked after children nationally. Our increase is lower than other areas because we are very good at keeping children either at home, or if they do require services, we have a lot of special guardianship orders, so we place children with families, which is both cost effective for the council but better for children because they're with their extended family then. So we have to build in, however, an increase in demand because you know, there is an annual increase every year. The numbers of children go up, or the complexity goes up. So you know, we've got lots of children with very complex needs, and it's based on a very, very complex algorithm around where our children are placed, how many children are placed in residential sector, for example, how many children are placed in foster carers, how many children are placed in independent, and then we do the average kind of cost, and our increase is based on cost, not on numbers of children. So it's the cost increase is the percentage increase, not number of children, because it's the costs that go up because the market value. So basic cost of placements is going up. It's not the children necessarily, it's the increase in cost of placements because the market forces.
Brilliant. Thank you for clarifying. So the 4% increase year on year is the increase in cost.
The increase. So, for example, last year an average residential placement cost may have cost £3,500 a week. This year it costs £5,000 a week, for example. So when we go through the list of our children and where they're placed, we aggregate the cost, and then the percentage rate is on the market increase, not on the number of children.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your question, Sam. I'm going to go to Paul, Shirley, and then Anne, and then Clive.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Graham, for your introduction presentation. You actually answered a couple of my questions in that, but I still got some questions to follow. There was a bit of a hiccup with the school transport provision at the start of the autumn term, and looking at R1 and R4, what lessons have been learnt over school transport provision, specifically with the coaches for Embrook and Forest School, to ensure that we get it right next time and our forecast modelling is correct going forward?
I'll give you the shorter answers, and I hope going to answer your question. One is plan earlier. Secondly, plan deeper. 3, communicate better. If you want any more detail than that, then I'm going to refer to my learned friend.
So you're aware that community transport sits outside of children's services, but children's services commission the services. So in looking to implement a route optimising system, we looked at both mainstream transport and SEND transport. And some of the decisions were made on very good intelligence around how we could optimise transport. But when our schools wrote to us because they were concerned about that, we reviewed what they asked us to review, and we in fact did revert one of the decisions, which is one that you make reference to, Paul. So included in the plan earlier would be consult with the schools as well? Absolutely, and that is something that I have had communication with across the delivery model of the community transport, because it relies on different bits of the council operating in a different way. Thank you for that. We also have undertaken a transport review, which we will have, that all has taken into consideration all of the activities, and so there will be a paper and a kind of action plan prepared in the next 4 weeks or so. Thank you, Carol. Looking at R1, R4, R6 and R8, what impact will the delay in providing the SEND school at Winnersh have on these particular areas, and how many families would be affected? So we're still working through the detail of that, Paul. We're in very careful and close negotiations with the DFE. So I can't give you a detailed answer at this stage, but we will have the answers in the next couple of weeks.
It's something that we're working on a daily basis, almost a daily basis, Paul.
So again, with the send school delay, what impact will that have on school spaces from September 2022 and maybe longer?
We're still working through the
Don't know.
detail of that, Paul.
I've got one final one. R3, it says alternative models of delivering are being considered, but the financial figures that you're showing at the bottom, what particular model is being used?
So you're talking about CSR3, are you there? Transformation.
Yes, CSR R3, yeah, that's the one, yeah.
So we're looking at all of the ways in which that we deliver our services. So you will be aware that in the recent past, children's services were not bringing in a balanced budget. That's, we did last year and we will this year. But we have had to do an awful lot of reconfiguration of our services, and we've had to look at the way in which our services are delivered, and we're continuing to do that. So it's a continuation of that work to ensure that we are as efficient as we can be. So that's how we will meet that. There is some detail that sits behind that, which I think is in the business case actually that has been presented. You should have that. Let me just check.
I couldn't see anything else apart from on page 47.
Yeah, I think our papers are a bit different from yours. I'm just trying to find it on my copy.
And the text in on page 47 didn't give any further information really.
Yeah, so I've got it now in front of me. I can see it now. So yes, it is part of our. It's part of the continuation of the transformation. So within that, we're looking at alternative models of delivery. We're doing it in line with our growth as well. So when we've looked at new services, when we introduce new services, they also bring savings because they are a more efficient way to deliver services, or they are working to keep children at home. But we need to invest in those services first. So they let me just make sure that I've got this right. So, for example, we've got savings that we've put in against a number of activities. I mean, I'd have to go in and get a very detailed view for you, but they've all been worked through, so they've all got detail to them. But it's about being more efficient. So if we think about children's services and its improvement journey, it's about being more efficient. And so there are efficiencies that we can take out by doing things differently, or by changing provider or commissioning something in a different way, having a look at the way in which we support our services. So there's all sorts of different ways, without taking away anything from frontline delivery, that we have got plans to deliver against to make sure that we meet that saving. But we have got growth as well to match. So although that savings look reasonably hefty, they are matched with growth. If you looked at our net figure, there's only a small difference between our net growth and our net savings. Because we want to show increase in our, where we've got inflationary growth in our service areas, we want to show a true picture of demand. But we've also got things in place to meet those savings. So some of them are things like our new Compass team, for example. We're investing in our Compass team, but that means we can make savings. Because if one child is prevented from coming into the looked after system, that saves us $250,000. So if we invest 50,000, we save $250,000 if we keep one child out of the system. Because our costs are high and our numbers are low, it's quite disproportionate. It only takes 3 or 4 children to be able to continue to live at home, and we make big savings.
Okay, thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Paul. We're going to go to Shirley online.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. Yeah, I've got in June this year, the CQC and Ofsted came and assessed progress on improving the service, and I note that the conclusion was that the area has made sufficient progress in addressing 5 of the 6 significant weaknesses, which was great, and congratulations to everybody for achieving that. My concern is with some of these savings that we hear. There's a large number of savings in transforming children's services. Are we going to be able to continue to make good progress? Are we going to be able to address the last significant weakness and get that to good, and to keep moving in the right direction? Are these cuts, the savings, if you like, going to impinge on progress, is my question, I guess.
So the short answer is yes. So that was our SEND revisit you're making reference to.
That's right, yeah.
Councillor Boyd, yes. So we made significant progress in 5 of the 6 areas that were identified from the inspection back in 2019, March 2019, and we made good progress in the 6th area, but not what they would deem as sufficient. So we've got an accelerated programme of work to meet that 6th target. They don't. So that's all in our SEND service, and most of the Transforming Children services and savings are not linked to SEND children. We've invested in SEND, and it was really a matter of improving all of our processes, making sure that we were being as efficient as we could be. So in reviewing the service and making the service more effective, we've made that progress. We, as you see there from the growth versus the savings, we have got a lot of growth as well, and that is also to continue to improve services. So meeting and managing demand, right help, right place, right time has got investment in SEND services as well. It's not just children's social care. So we are truly making progress across all of children's services. And because of that, we are able to make some efficiencies, cost containment really, because we've got growth as well. So it's more cost containment than savings, but we have to, because of the way we do the MTFP, that's how we kind of present it. But if you looked at the net difference, there's, we've got 865 savings next year, but we've got 1.43 growth. We've got 2.226, but we've got 2.5 growth, and we've got 2.8, but we've 3.09 growth. So we got more growth than we have savings. Yeah. So it's just the way we present our budgets. I am confident that we are able to meet all of our savings.
Great. I'm really pleased to hear that, because the area that is still a little bit needs some work is the successful transition to adulthood, which has been awry for some considerable while. So it would be really good to get that.
So we have a task and finish group as part of our SEND Innovation and Improvement Programme that's specifically looking at transitions, all ages of transitions, not just transitions into adulthood, but transitions at all ages and stages.
Yeah. Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Shirley. Anne, would you like to ask a question?
Please. So actually one minor point is that on page 49, CSR 5, there's a rather attractive graph, but I can't read it. So I just wanted to mention that. But then another question is on page 59, CS3, at the bottom, I think. I just wondered how much accommodation is being provided by the budgets in year 2. So that's 1.2 million, isn't it?
I don't have the same pages as you, unfortunately, but I'm assuming that's capital.
Yeah, Carol, it's CS3 care leaver accommodation.
Thank you, Graham. So we are developing a number of care leaver homes, if you like. One of them's London Road. We're also looking to there's another line further down that's Seaford Court. So we want to keep our care leavers local because they've been looked after children prior to becoming care leavers, and as I said earlier, the vast majority of our children are accommodated within 20 miles of their home address and live locally. So we don't want at 18 for them to have to move out of borough because we don't have the right accommodation. So it's investing in what we've tried to do in children's services is enrich the offer to children and be more cost efficient at the same time. And we can do that if you have in borough accommodation because it's more cost effective than sending children out. So it's a double win for us.
Yes, that sounds very good. I just wondered how many places it will provide.
I think it's 6. It might be 7 off the top of my head. It's either 6 or 7.
Okay, thanks very much. I've got 2 questions which they might be related, I think. So page 53, CSR9, and it's about it's about a system.
Yeah.
And oops.
So it's Capital One. So we have had Capital One as a system for a number of years on a rolling 1-year contract. And if something's on a rolling 1-year contract, we can't capitalise it. It has to be more than a 1-year contract. So because of COVID and because of the pressures of work and on resources, we had to cover the shortfall of being able to get it into the capital programme for 1 year. So that's a special item to cover that. So it's one special item to cover the cost of the capita contract until it goes into capital. If you look at the capital bids, it's in there because it's on a 2-year contract now, so we can capitalise it.
So it is an IT system.
It is.
Yes.
And is it a bespoke system for children's services?
It's Capital One, so it's the system that supports our SEND service.
So was it a bespoke software written for Woking and Borough, or is it generic in some way?
It's generic, yeah. Capital One's a big kind of hitter in that IT world. But we had a historic contract with them, and it was only when we've, as part of our improvement, we've reviewed everything, and so we've had a rolling 1-year contract for a lot of years, which has meant that we haven't been able to capitalise it. So we've made sure that now it's a 2-year contract, we can capitalise it, whilst we look at whether that's the right system moving forward. Because more systems now, there are more companies now that have got good systems for SEND and other aspects of children's services. So we're going to have a review, see whether or not we want to continue with Capita. But whilst we do that, we've got it on a 2-year contract because it takes 2 years to do a really decent piece of work to look at alternatives.
Oh, right. So are you saying the advantage of capitalising it is that you might be able to change it?
The advantage of capitalising it is it doesn't come out of our revenue, which is where we were paying from it from before.
Oh, right. Okay, right.
There was a pressure in revenue that we don't need because it's a system, it can be capitalised.
Oh, right. Okay, thank you. And then page 61 is also systems contract. Is that the same thing?
Same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah, it's it's in the capital then.
Right. Okay. And I've
till 23, 24.
And has the implementation of the system been delayed?
No, it's live.
It's nothing like that.
No, it's not. It's just we've been paying for out of revenue for years and years on a rolling 1-year contract, and that's not cost effective for us. We want to get it into capital because then it's a more effective way to pay for it. But we had to get it onto a 2-year contract to be able to do that, which is why we've got a special item for year 1, 22-23, and 23-24. You can see it's in the capital and not in revenue at all now.
Right. Okay.
If you'd look back last year, it was in revenue.
Right. Okay. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Tidying up of budgets, really, where they should be.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Clive.
Now be kind, Clive, it's my last meeting.
I'm always kind. Especially to a really good, especially to a really good officer like you. And I think it's a great shame that you're leaving us. But good luck in your new position in Derbyshire, I think it is, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes, thank you.
Yeah, good luck there. So my first question is to Graham. When you were going through the revenue bids, you said that there was increasing demand and complexity, and then in brackets, legal. And then you said that cases could cost up to £100,000. But next year, we got 0 in the budget. And the year after, we got £20,000. And the year after that, we got 50. So if we get a difficult case that costs us £100,000, we're stuffed. Is that right?
Do you want me to take that, Graham?
Yeah, go on.
So we have a legal tracking meeting. So we track all of the children that are going through the system. So we know those that are complex cases and we identify them early. If we know we're going to have a complex case, we would then be making a supplementary estimate, because that's outside of business as usual. So it really depends on the case. We are obviously budgeted within the revenue budget to meet the kind of what we would expect as the normal activity of legal requirements to support children going through the care system, because it's the children going through care proceedings. That's the legal service we're talking about. And it's only if we get an anomaly that we then kind of in the past we've overspent. What we're looking to do now is to do a supplementary estimate to identify those cases that are outside the ordinary, because we build our budget on a set of assumptions, and if we've got something that's outside that set of assumptions, we would then do a supplementary estimate. But we will know well in advance whether we've got any of those complex cases. That's the difference between, I'd say, Children's Services 3 years ago and where we are now. None of these things are surprises anymore, because we track all of the children, so we know very early doors. We are also making some efficiencies in the way in which that our legal services have operated. So it's a pan Berkshire service, and one of the things that we were finding was that the legal services were going straight to getting very expensive counsel for what we might consider to be more run-of-the-mill cases, because they didn't have as many experienced solicitors as they would like to have had, because it's very difficult to recruit in the same way it is in other areas of children's services. But there's a big piece of work being undertaken at the moment to address those things. So we are confident that the budget we now, because we have had growth previously in the legal budget to sort of right size it to what we think is normal activity and what the kind of normal costs would be. And as I say, if there's anything over and above that, we would put a supplementary estimate in, which is what's the agreed financial process. That's right, isn't it, Graham? Not Graham H, Graham E.
Yeah, that's right, Carol.
Thank you.
Well, that answer just shows how much you're going to be missed and what a good job you've done over the last 3 years, doesn't it?
Thank you. I'm sure things will be fine. All the foundations are in place, Clive.
Oh, that's reassuring. Page number 46. So we've got some savings that we're hoping to make, £842,000, and this is supporting children to remain at home rather than go to a placement.
Yeah.
If they're staying at home, how are they going to be educated?
So they will be accessing mainstream school. If they're looked after children, they'll also get support from our virtual school. Because if they're placed with family, they still get additional support. If they so Because a child may remain at home does not mean that children's services won't be working with them. It just means they won't have looked after status, but they could be subject to a child protection plan, or they could be a child in need, and they likely would be if we've diverted them from being a looked after child, which is the highest level of status for a child. If a child's looked after by the local authority, that's the kind of most extreme end of the spectrum. The next phase down from that would be a child protection plan, where the child would have a social worker and their case would be monitored, and they would have a safety plan, and all that work would be done to protect them and encourage them and support them in school and all of those other services. And the low step down from that would be a child in need, and they would also get a social worker, and the step down from that would be an early help worker. So they wouldn't go from remaining at home to have no services. It would be what service level that they would meet the threshold for within the progression of children's services from the lowest level to the highest level. And they would be worked with our Compass team. So we wouldn't just kind of manage to keep them at home and then walk away. We do some intensive work with the whole family. So we do family work, we would look at attachment, and we would work with the young person and the family so that it was, the right thing for the child and the family to remain at home. But those children still get a lot of support.
Thanks very much. Going back to home to school transport, I just wanted to make sure that we definitely learnt some lessons from the mistake that we made with the transport to Forest School and Embrook School, and that when we want to try to change the services to save money in the future, that we will make sure that parents are consulted and not told the day before term starts that there's going to be some changes. And I just want to hear from you that you're certain that that isn't going to happen again.
I would be incredibly disappointed if it happened again. We've put all safeguards in place to ensure it didn't. It was the introduction of a new system that and all the implications of that caused the kind of changes that were made, and not necessarily the follow through in terms of all the communication that should have happened. It was an organisational change. It wasn't children's services necessarily. We did all we could to support, and we did, working with our colleagues in corporate services, then respond to a lot of the concerns from parents, and we worked with every single parent in the send arena, so that's some 380. We contacted every single parent, so children's services did that piece of work, and we then looked at particularly the Forest situation, because the head wrote to me personally, so I had a conversation about that. I had a conversation with my colleague in the corporate services, and we made a decision that we would reverse that particular route optimization decision. So that definitely won't happen again, because we won't be reverting back again. So that will definitely stay. And to reassure you, now everything has settled down. So there was a bit of noise at the beginning, but it actually is all working. Every child has got a provision to get them to school that are entitled to that, and everything's working as it should be working. It was just the timing of it. It was done quite late in the summer, and that's not ideal.
Okay, thanks. I know that you sorted it all out and you reacted very quickly to sorting it all out, but if we are going to be trying to do this again in 3 or 4 years' time, maybe not with that school, but other schools, or even lesser time frame, I just want to make sure that we won't leave it until towards the end of August to start having conversations, that we will do it weeks and weeks and weeks before that.
Definitely won't, and there's been lessons learned across the whole organisation. So we've done a whole review of the summer, and we have a really robust processes in that will be in from now. So it won't happen again. There won't be another experience like this year. There just won't be.
Okay, so moving on to page 49, and this is placement of children in care and care leavers. So the figures are based on a 4% growth assumption, informed by analysis of previous trends. Are you able to give us a flavour of the analysis?
Yes, so we do a line-by-line review of all children. So we monitor the 130 children that are looked after and the 80 care leavers. And where those children are able to be stepped down to placements that are in their best interest. So we wouldn't make a placement decision purely based on money. I'm sorry, Graham E, but we wouldn't move a child just based on the fact that we could get them a placement that was less costly. We will only move a child if it's in their best interest in terms of their care plan. And we have independent rigour in our system. So independent reviewing officers ensure that the social work service delivers appropriately against the care plan, and they are able to escalate through a legal process directly to me as the DCS if they disagree with the social worker saying, I'm going to move this child because we can get them into this placement and this is less costly, for example. However, if a child is in a placement and we know that another placement can meet their needs more effectively and it's closer to home, or it means that they've got more access to better education, or that the package of support around the child is better and it happens to be less expensive, then we will move the child. And so we map all the children all the way through their care journey in terms of when we would want to make decisions about whether we step them down or not. And obviously if a child comes into care in crisis, they're likely to go into more costly, more support. So you might have one-to-one support, for example, or two-to-one support for the first, let's say, 3 months while an assessment's undertaken. So we make those timely decisions, and then our cost analysis of that is we have all of the costs of all of the 130 children in all the different placements that they occupy. We then take the average of that cost, and that's what the percentage increase is based on. It's not based on children. So it's not like 4% growth of children. It's 4% growth of costs of provision. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. How much are we spending on children in care? Is it about £10 million a year?
Bit less.
Bit less, but a really significant sum, like.
Not much less.
Much less.
No, not much.
Not much less. Okay.
Obviously, if children were in placements, that's where the costs are. So, for example, a child in a secure placement, £7,000 a week. So you could do the maths. And we don't have any choice about that because that's ordered through the court.
Okay, thanks. Page 52. So it's very good that we're reducing the number of agency workers.
Yeah, we've done really well.
Yeah,
done really well in that space.
And you've done a really good job on that over the last 3 years, haven't you? You've reduced it quite considerably.
We were at 36% and we're at 15 now.
That's very good. Further on in this page, you talk about CAMS.
Yes.
And 3 years ago, a child in Wokingham was having to wait about a year to have an assessment. It might have been 9 months to 15 months or something like that, but an average of a year. And do you know how long they're having to wait for an assessment at the moment?
It depends on the pathway, Clive. So children that are waiting for an ASD diagnosis, the wait list for those children is still too long in my view, but they do get support whilst they're on the waiting for assessment. So what is commissioned, and it's commissioned through the CCG, not through Children's Services. So the CCG commission the CAMS service. They commission a service to diagnose, not a service to treat. But the treatment happens in the assessment, lead up to the assessment period. So the CAMs work with the family, and then the assessment confirms the diagnosis. But in terms of waiting for the actual diagnosis, that length of time is still too long. Children that are accessing CAM services that don't have, are not waiting for an ASD, not on the ASD pathway, that's about 6 to 12 weeks now for an initial assessment. That's much, much better. And we have lower level CAMS support services. So we have COOTH, we have ARC, we have lots of other services that children can access outside of being formally referred to CAMS.
All right, thank you very much.
But our CAMS service is for children in care. So we're going to have a CAMS service in Wokingham for children in care so that they get much quicker access, because obviously they've got complex needs because they're looked after children. So we will have our own CAMS service. That's what that funding's for.
That's really good. When you said that it depends on the pathway, and if the pathway is ASD, it's still too long.
Yeah.
Do you know how long?
It depends.
Averagely.
About 30 weeks. But again, that's outside of the control of Children's Services, because it's a commissioned service by the CCG. It's not Children's Services. But we have put a lot of pressure on them, and I do know that there's a lot of work with the families whilst they're on that, whilst they're waiting for that diagnosis.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. Page 54. When are we going to have the next Ofsted inspection? When do you expect that to happen?
I don't know. Don't hold me to this because I'm not going to be around. But I don't think it'll be in 2022. I think it'll be later, because we've done so well. So we are in the real good books of Ofsted at the moment. So I think they'll leave us alone for a little while.
Right. So because you've done so well, your department, it might not be until 2023. So then we should expect to be getting good, or even better than good.
If we'd have had if our focus visit in June had been a graded inspection, we would have been good or outstanding. It was really remarkable. It was very, very, very positive. And we know the areas that we still want to work on, but generally speaking, everything's in really good shape now. So because of that, and because of COVID, and Ofsted obviously have to catch up in terms of there's some authorities haven't inspected at all, you see, for a number of years. We were obviously on the bit of the hot seat because of where we were, but because we've done so well, we're not now, which is why I don't think that they'll inspect us in 2022.
Thanks. And another question, if it's okay? Yep. Yeah, okay. We're going to spend another £6 million on secondary school places. Do we have some idea where we're going to spend, which schools are going to benefit from those extra places? Are they mainly sixth form places? Are we looking at providing a sixth form at the Bowhunt School? And if we are, is that going to affect the sixth forms at Holt, Embrook and Forest?
Do you want to answer that, Graham, or do you want me to?
Well, what I could say to you, Clive, is that that's all under review. It's actually quite complicated. I'm not trying to kick this into the longer grass. I personally got involved in a lot of the discussions. And we're trying to sort it out as soon as possible. We had an item there for sixth form provision that's different to the provision that we need across to take up the bulge that has just come in and going through. So they're different and complicated issues, Clive. That's not answering your question, is it?
So we've got a secondary strategy that has been finalised at the moment, which is a 10-year secondary strategy that will identify where the need is. We as an authority have a responsibility to ensure that we are not disproportionately disadvantaging any school. So we have to make sure that, and all our schools are good. All our secondary schools now have a grading of good or better. So all of our parents can be confident that their children will be going to a good school. It may not be their parents' first choice, but we are confident that that provision is good across the board. And so we need to make sure that we are not disadvantaging any school by expanding one school at the cost of places at another school. So it is quite, as Graham says, quite a complicated algorithm to work through. Same applies to sixth form. There is no decision about where a sixth form provision will be built. We don't need a new sixth form until 24-25 in terms of placements. There are enough placements across the borough. Again, may not be where parents would like their children to go ideally, but we cannot disadvantage schools. So we have to be really careful about how we deliver against need and demand and not public kind of pressure or parental preference, which is a really difficult balance to kind of meet. But it's absolutely my statutory duty to do that. I've got to make sure that all children have access to good education, and I've got to make sure that there's sufficiency.
Well, I can say to you, Clive, is that we are in dialogue with school heads, and the dialogue is very collaborative across. You know, there's this concept that was put around by Blair, wasn't it, that academies should be competitive with each other. Actually, I find that they're extremely collaborative with each other. And they're certainly being collaborative on these issues, and they do understand that if one got an advantage over another, it wouldn't be right for the children of Wokingham as a whole. So they are working with us very closely, including Ben Godber at Bowhunt. All of them are, actually, all of them.
Okay, thanks. Page 57, we talk about a £400,000 survey. Oh, did I? Sorry.
That's a condition survey, Clive. It's to make sure that all schools are of the right condition, because we've also got a statutory duty to make sure children access safe education. So that's what that's for.
Okay, we need to make sure that the school is in good condition, the material of the school.
Well, that's a statutory responsibility to make sure that the provision is appropriate in terms of its fabric and its accessibility and all of those things. Yeah.
Okay, if we find they've got a leaking roof, it's the responsibility of the academy, is it? To put right?
Yeah, they have a budget for maintenance. So yes, but if it's a massive issue and it's, you know, like, I don't know, let's say there was a major incident, we would have a responsibility to ensure that those children were appropriately supported. And if the academy could not demonstrate it was financially viable to do that, we would have to support them. Now that could be in all sorts of arrangements. I wouldn't have to be directly paying for it, but we, because of our responsibilities to children, we would have to look at that. But yes, the short answer is yes, it is their responsibility, providing it's minor.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Clive. Just picking up on Clive's point about school places, and you know, you set aside, you're looking to fund that. I noticed that in the additional details, it highlighted about the Forest School clearly only offering places to boys, and few preferences being expressed there. I mean, obviously, we have just closed the admissions process for secondary places starting in September 22. And I know that everybody here on the panel would congratulate the Forest School on having achieved a good Ofsted rating. Do you think that parents will now be keener to apply for the Forest School, and that will make a difference in future?
Early indications suggest yes, but we are also, the head is also very proactively engaged with the local authority in terms of looking at how we support the future of the school. But yes, there's been more interest.
Yeah, thank you. Paul, did you have another question? Okay, so just. Okay.
This is a question really for you, Graham. So it's on page 56. Right at the bottom, it says that the council received non-ring-fence basic needs grants, and there's 7.2 million for 21-22, 5.3 million for 22-23, and then unknown for 23-24. I assume that you're having lots of conversations with Department of Education, and just wondered if you'd found out any sort of indication as what it might be in 23-24, and have you had any explanation as to why it's decreasing 21-22, 22-23?
I'm guessing that's to Graham Ebers rather than Howe, is it?
No, it was you actually.
To me, is it? Oh, you want me to land that one? There's a lot of conversations going on with the Department of Education about funding in general and specifically. We have a number of needs. We're supporting a number of academies with bids. I can't be more specific than that in my answer. And if you want something deeper, then we'll have to write to you.
It's all about the funding formula, Clive, as well, and how they work out what they assume our need is and what our additional need is, and that's how we end up getting the funding we do. But it isn't ring fenced, so we just put it into capital and then we use it as appropriate. That's right, isn't it, Graham? Graham E.
I didn't think I could avoid being drawn into this one.
Well, I tried hard.
Although I thought Graham Howe did a sterling job. Yeah, in answer to the question, yes, it is based on a formula. It does change year on year. Depends probably how centrally they're choosing to distribute the money, both within the education sector and outside in terms of capital monies. Different things are different priorities from year to year. And we may know the missing figures in the local government finance settlement in December. I think we'll certainly be given a firm year one. We may well be given a speculative year 2 and 3.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to Graham and to both Grahams. And I think we'd all like to thank Carol very much for her work as Children's Services Director. As we've seen this evening, you've brought the department on so much during your tenure. You've made a real difference. We've seen also that we're retaining our staff and being able to keep social workers with our children, so they've got that continuation of a familiar face, and the support is fantastic. I know I said lots of good things about your work on corporate parenting, but tonight it's all about your work with schools as well as with children's services. I think we'll have a round of applause for Carol.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And we certainly wish you all the best in your new role.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you all. Thank you very much. I will see some of you soon, but thank you.
Okay, so if you can all enjoy the rest of the evening, and members, we're going to look at the forward plan.
All right. Good night.
Good night. Paul.
Yes, thank you. I've only just realised that Phil Cunnington is a deputy executive, and what happened at management?
Yes, that's about management. I believe it deputy exec on management is where
to all overview and scrutiny committees.
Okay, so let me.
My understanding is we should not have any executive or any deputy executive members on any overview and scrutiny committees.
I think we referred to Neil about that at the last meeting. So may I ask Neil for his advice?
So the decision back in 2019 was that no deputy executives at all on the management committee, but they could attend the other committees, but not for their individual portfolio items. So that's why Councillor Cunnington withdrew.
Nothing against Phil at all. It was purely executive, deputy executive roles is where I'm coming from.
But as it was explained, that was OS management, and this is corporate and community.
Yeah, my understanding was it was across all overview and scrutiny committees.
Oh, right. What section of the Constitution was that?
No, that's what I was questioning. That was my understanding. But what Neil has just explained, it's only where they cover their own portfolios. They're not allowed to be involved.
Yes, certainly. You know, Phil cannot be on HOSC. Right. Okay. So looking at the forward programme. This is an extraordinary meeting. So on the 24th, we've got our November meeting where we're again looking at the medium-term financial plan, and we'll be looking at the contract management update. And then in December, we're more looking at the MTFP, and we've got an update on the arts and culture strategy. And then in January, again, we've got looking at the budget planning and the parking strategy and in-house public-facing services, which will mean looking at building control and PPP coming back in-house. We have looked at that before. It's been quite restricted, but I think at that point we'll be able to look more widely and in depth.
Yeah, so just on that item, Guy, the chairman has had a briefing with Steve Moore. So there'll be two sort of separate items there. The first one being sort of the customer experience in terms of how residents, when they enter the council for any reason, how they then move around to different departments and making sure that they get the service they need and they're not being pushed between departments and not getting answers. So it's all about the flow of the customer. So that's the first item. The second one is a separate item. We've split it up to learn a little bit more about building control and about how planning enforcement and the difference between them, because there is a little bit of confusion generally between where one stops and one begins and what powers one has and compared to the other. So those two items for that, Chairman.
Right, thank you. And then the March meeting, we've got flood risk management, police and fire, and the new domestic abuse contract, which is an update from when we looked at it last month. These all seem quite packed because, as we saw tonight, you know, there's a lot of things to dig into on the financial planning. Does anybody have any comments or input? Go on, Callum.
I forgot something. You reminded me there with January, depending on how much changes due to the local government finance settlement and how much of an MTFP item we have to have, something might have to give in terms of the items that I've just read out to you there. But if that's the case, we'll either have another meeting or we'll try and reschedule it for a later date.
All right. Okay, members? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Shirley.
Thank you, Alison. Yeah, this is more by way of an observation, really, a more general thing. One of the things I've noticed recently that's crept in is that we used to have a situation quite often where we would get a decent, quite meaty report on a subject, and then when the officers came to overview and scrutiny, they would do a PowerPoint presentation which just gave an overview. What I'm kind of noticing recently is that the PowerPoint presentations seem to be becoming the report. And today was a really good example of that. The BME forum, it was quite a brief PowerPoint, which then threw up quite a lot of questions. But the report that we finally found out about, which I had a look at just now, and it's a really meaty report, and I feel that we should have had the benefit of that report before scrutiny. So
yes, I think what the councillors in the room won't know is that Shirley put a note into Teams to say that she'd managed to locate the report online. It was very, very interesting and informative, and I completely agree, Shirley, that should have been circulated to us all in advance of the meeting. So I'm sure Guy would agree that we all want to have as much information as we can in advance so that we can read it, digest it, and we're not asking questions to seek explanation. Yeah, completely agree, Shelley.
Thank you.
Right, so if we're all happy with the forward plan, I'd rather not be changing it since Guy's unwell and can't be with us. Let's hope Guy will be back on the 24th. He's got 3 weeks, so if you're watching, Guy, best wishes to you and the family, and we hope to see you at the next meeting. Right, and with that, I will close the meeting. Thank you.